by and by. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. I'll fly away.
I've had a lot of introductions, but that's the most special ever, I can tell you. Let's one more time congratulate and thank your colleague students, all-girls staff. Thank you. It is a great honor for me to join the entire University of North Carolina at Asheville community in welcoming a special friend, Dr. Bell Hooks, back to our campus. It has been about 5 years since her last visit, but the power of her conviction, the strength of her message, and the unrelenting sense of hope that she brought to us during her residency here still resonates, still challenges us, and must still empower us in our fight for justice here and beyond. I want in a special way to thank all who worked to make today's event possible, including the Office of Multicultural Student Programs, Africana Studies, the Black Student Association, the Humanities Student Association, the History Student Association, the Literature Club, Women Acting in Liberation, the Alliance, and the Office of Cultural and Special Affairs. Many, many thanks. Bell Hooks is nothing less than a force for social justice. But most important, she is a voice of hope and a voice of faith that justice can prevail and right can claim the day. Her agenda, Cornel West has written, is simple: that the disempowered, the disenfranchised, the unspoken for, and the overlooked must find ways to empower themselves. They must learn to speak, in a sense, from the margins of society. And in her own words, in her book, Teaching Community, A Pedagogy of Hope, she writes, and I quote, "My hope emerges from those places of struggle where I witness individuals positively transforming their lives and the world around them. Educating is always a vocation rooted in hopefulness." And that, then, it seems to me, is an essential part of liberal learning. There is hope in what we do here: the power of transformation, the promise of human potential, the opportunity to reinvent ourselves and our communities in ways more just and more compassionate. That hope is at the core of the liberal arts and at the core of what we must be at UNC Asheville. So today I join in welcoming Bell Hooks back to our campus, and as I do, I have the privilege of introducing an individual universally respected in our community. Lavoy Spooner, who will formally introduce Bell Hooks, is this region's senior officer for corporate and external affairs for Bell South. Even more than that, he is a leader of the first rank, serving this region and state on an extraordinary list of commissions and boards. We are particularly proud that that list includes the University of North Carolina at Asheville Foundation. His is the work of hope and community, of service and of justice. And I can tell you that wherever good is being done in Asheville, Lavoy Spooner is there. Ladies and gentlemen, Lavoy Spooner.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Mullen. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker today, Dr. Bell Hooks. She is currently the distinguished professor at Berea College, and prior to that, she was the distinguished professor of English at City College in New York, and also taught at Yale and Oberlin. She was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky in 1952, and received her bachelor's degree from Stanford University in 1973, her master's in 1976 from the University of Wisconsin, and her PhD in 1983 from the University of California at Santa Cruz. Dr. Hook uses a synonym which is intended to honor both her grandmother, whose name she took, and her mother, as well as provide her the opportunity to establish a separate voice for the person Gloria Watson, her born name. Dr. Hook's first book, Ain't I a Woman? Black Women and Feminism, was named one of the 20 most influential women's books of the last 20 years by Publishers Weekly in 1992. One of her most recent books, We Real Cool, Black Men and Masculinity, takes a hard look at the problems black males face. And I believe her most recent book was oriented to young African-American children to distill pride in their heritage. Dr. Bell Hooks is a passionate scholar and is among the leading public intellectuals of her generation. Today, Dr. Hooks will address the topic, return migration. Dr. Hooks?
Thank you. So, of course, we see Asheville's got it going on. That's why I wanted to live here. I looked at the property, but I couldn't afford Asheville. I'm happy to be back. I think it speaks so highly of the students here that when I came to Asheville 5 years ago, I met one of your African-American students, Julia, whom many of you may know. Julia still calls me to this day to talk about books, ideas, and it just shows you what having that face-to-face contact between students and people they read and study can form meaningful relationships. I thank everybody who made it possible for me to be here. It seems like just a moment of incredible synchronicity. I want to dedicate my words today to the Chancellor because, like him, I've made a big change since I came to Asheville. I moved from Manhattan to the small town of Berea, and that's what I'm going to talk about, going back to Kentucky, which is where I was raised. I know that many of you here have read your Bell Hooks books, and you have lots of questions. So, and this is a kind of, I've decided, I've only read this talk once before, that it's not the best talk to give, in that it seems like a more solemn kind of talk. So I'm going to try to reduce it, and then we'll have lots of time for question and answers. I've been talking already today with students about media, about Sideways, about Hitch, all the movies that are out. The more I teach, the more I learn that teaching is a prophetic vocation. A prophetic vocation demands of us allegiance to integrity of vision and belief in the face of those who would either seek to silence or discredit our words. In Jim Wallace's book, The Soul of Politics, he maintains that the prophetic vocation demands of us that we be, quote, bold in telling the truth and ready to hold up an alternative vision, one that enables people to imagine new possibilities. I think we saw an alternative vision in the girls' chorus, all kind of girls, shimmying, shaking, singing to us, and we congratulate them. As I feel like life is so amazing if we listen to our intuitive self. Yesterday, something told me that I needed to get to the airport way earlier. And my therapist, whom I had an appointment with, agreed that we could talk in the car and she would drop me at the airport. And I got there way early, and I'm in Charlotte, and I see this black man's afro before me and his bony little legs, and I said, Cornell West? And we hadn't seen each other for a number of years. And as his life has also been in transition, many of you, if you read and study him, you know he's been dealing with cancer, for which he is very healthy right at this moment. But we just sat and had a wonderful hour and a half of fellowship together, remembering ourselves as young colleagues who started out together at Yale. And everywhere we went in the airport, people were like, Dr. West. I was like, well, I guess, I even said to one black woman, she said, Dr. West, I'm a law student, I'm doing critical legal studies. I said, don't you read Bell Hooks? And Cornell, his ever generous self, was saying to me, all these people know me because they see me on television. But you have created for us a body of work that is filled with wisdom. And you stand alone, he said to me, in always bringing the question of spirituality to the table. And I bring that up today because it was through my spiritual and meditative life that I felt it was time for me to move from the north and to come to the south. And I struggled to find the right location for me. And this little talk I'm going to read from is called Geographies of the Heart. And it says, all my life, I have searched for a place of belonging, a place that would become home. Growing up in a small Kentucky town, I knew in early childhood what home was, what it felt like. Home was the safe place, the place where one could count on not being hurt. It was the place where wounds were attended to. Home was the place where the me of me would matter. My first remembered home, a cinder block house with concrete floors on a hill, stood as though naked against the lush backdrop of a dense natural landscape. Trees, honeysuckle vines, blackberry bushes, and wild strawberries all made the concrete house seem out of place. Set against nature, but unable to take over the world of lush wild things, since the house was fixed, unchanging, and the natural landscape adamantly growing. In this wilderness where I first moved and lived and had my being, I was nature and nature was me. It seems like this is a very prophetic moment to be in Asheville. As many of you know, there's just such real estate speculation and stuff, such growth here. And that in that growth, there's always the risk that nature is lost to us. In this wilderness where I first moved and lived and had my being, I was nature and nature was me. Over and over again, the grown-ups would tell us to respect the wilderness around us, to understand that it could be friend or foe. Our task was to learn discernment, to be in nature as nature, to understand the limits of the natural world and of the human body in that world. Nature's generosity made it possible for us to have the pleasure of walking through fields and fields of homegrown vegetables, the pleasure of popping fresh yellow and red tomatoes in one's mouth straight from the vine. In this early childhood, I experienced firsthand all that poet Gerard Manley Hopkins evokes when he writes that nature is never spent within us, that within it lives the dearest, freshest, deep down things. As a young child, I believed the wilderness around me had its own special perfume, that when I stayed outside for a long time, that scent entered me and came with me indoors. Roaming those Kentucky hills, I dwelled in paradise. I was certain that I belonged, confident of my place and purpose. In that culture of belonging, I learned the importance of divine providence. I was talking about the fate of African Americans in our culture earlier with the students, and saying that one of the things that Cornell and I discussed yesterday was that this is a very terrible period in our nation's history for African Americans collectively. And one of the things that I was talking with the students about is the way in which so many African American people feel a sense of despair because they're measuring their life by, whether they're going to win the lottery, whether they're going to be rich. And I was talking to them about my grandfather, who was a sharecropper in Kentucky. And I always remember that my grandfather would talk about how the white world may be a powerful world, but that world can't make the sun shine or the rain fall. And so in many ways, he always had a sense that there is a world beyond man. There is a world beyond humankind. And so no matter how much racism he might encounter or white supremacy, he had a world of beauty and value that he found in nature. What I want to talk about today as a culture of belonging. In that culture of belonging, I learned the importance of divine providence. His profound belief in divine order allowed Daddy Jerry to experience wholeness and integrity despite the forces of white supremacist exploitation and oppression surrounding him. His love of the soil, the solace that he found in nature, enabled him to have an open mind and an uplifted heart. Despite the sufferings he experienced living in the world of Jim Crow, subject to the cruel whims of a white supremacist patriarchal regime, he found a culture of belonging in the natural world with the earth as his witness. Now, those of you who practice Buddhism in the room know that there are many Buddhist practices that have to do with acknowledging the earth as a witness to all that we experience. It was this culture of belonging he shared with me, belonging in the natural world. His first granddaughter trailing behind him as he dropped seeds into the earth, as he harvested the fruits of his labor. In Rebalancing the World, Carol Lee Flinders shares the insight that it is useful to think of the values of belonging as habits of the heart. And it is fitting that in those early years of my childhood, I felt heart whole. Explaining further her understanding of a culture of belonging, Flinders writes, "The values of belonging are, in effect, the symptoms of a particular way of being in the world. Together, they form a dynamic whole, a syndrome, if you will, or an orientation or ethos. Within that whole, each value reinforces and all but implies the other. And the source of their power as a constellation is the synergy between them." Some of you might read that and think about, if you saw the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? Because that's a lot of what they were describing in that film, the interdependency of life. Flinders asked readers to think of the values of belonging as points on a circle, windows onto a single reality. Listing the characteristics of the culture of belonging, she explains, fundamental to the culture of belonging is a strong sense of reciprocal connection to the land where one lives, empathic relationship to animals, self-restraint, custodial conservatism, deliberateness, balance, expressiveness, generosity, egalitarianism, mutuality, affinity for alternative modes of knowing, playfulness, inclusiveness, nonviolent conflict resolution, and openness to spirit. It's so amazing to me when I read that sense of a culture of belonging, because I think many of us of all different ethnicities that are moving back from northern cities to southern places are coming back precisely because it was in these locations that we felt that sense of a culture of belonging, of connectedness. I was eating in a restaurant last night, and the waiter, Michael, who worked with us, said that he had moved back here from Manhattan, and he kept saying, it's not that I didn't have a good life in Manhattan, but there was something here, something about this land that I grew up in, and coming to be with his grandmother who had been dying of leukemia. And I feel that in my own self that, you know, my parents never called me when I was in New York, but they called me in Kentucky like the phone cost is the same. But there's something about the fact that I have returned to that landscape of their world that is of value to them. The values of belonging imprinted on my consciousness in early childhood were in conflict with the world inside our patriarchal domestic household. In the concrete house, I did not belong. There, my spirit was alien. There, I was subjected to soul-murdering assault. When my family moved from the hills into town, it was a shift brought about by our mother's desire to have us be more civilized, to rid us of the taint of being from the backwoods, from being country people. Trapped in my grief about leaving the natural landscape of my formative years, I became quite dysfunctional in the town, my grief steady and constant. In the world of the town, I was faced with the politics of race, class, and gender. From roaming hills and feeling free, I learned in the world of the city that to be safe as a girl, and especially as a black girl, it was best to be still, enclosed, confined. I learned that to be safe within the space of whiteness, within white supremacy, one had to keep within set boundaries, to not cross the tracks separating black from white. I learned to feel shame when clothes were worn hand-me-downs in the city. How fortunate, however, I was that in the world of dominator culture, both within our household and in the world beyond, I found a place of refuge in books, ways of perceiving the world which expanded my consciousness and left me wanting more from life than I believed was possible in the changing landscape of Kentucky as black people left hills, backwoods, and countrysides to pursue what they perceived to be better life in towns, or left altogether to migrate to northern cities. It's so amazing to think about. Think about the fact that before the early 1900s, more than 90% of black people lived in the agrarian South. We were an agrarian people with a relationship to the land, to the environment. Because I know y'all out there, most white folks think of environmentalism as a white issue, and that black people are not concerned about the land and the environment and don't have that custodial relationship. But part of our whole relationship in slavery was the custodial relationship to the land. So that in part, I feel that in thinking about the healing of black America, we also have to return and reclaim our relationship to the land. Those of you who are working on farming, look at the history of black people and farming in our society. Oftentimes, black folks who've left Southern roots have symbolically run away to escape the everyday racism that restricts, limits, and confines. A racism that seems somehow worse than the racism one encounters elsewhere, because we encounter it among those with whom we are familiar. It is intimate terrorism imposed not by strangers. When I left Kentucky more than 30 years ago, I felt like an exile, as though I was being forced to leave the landscape of my origin, my native place, because it would not allow me to grow, to be fully self-actualized. Both the inner world of family dysfunction and the outer world of dominator culture threatened to suffocate my spirit. Writing about exile in Pedagogy of the Heart, Paulo Freire contends, suffering exile implies recognizing that one has left his or her context of origin. It means experiencing bitterness, the clarity of a cloudy place where one must make right moves to get through. Exile cannot be suffered when it is all pain and pessimism. Exile cannot be suffered when it is all reason. One suffers exile when his or her conscious body, reason, and feeling, one's whole body is touched. To have a project for the future, Paulo writes, I do not live only in the past. Rather, I exist in the present, where I prepare myself for the possible return. Exile highlighted for me all that was vital and life-sustaining about the Kentucky world I grew up in. It was the field of dreams I explored to uncover the counter-hegemonic culture of belonging that made me different, able to think critically, to be radically open. Even though Kentucky in our vernacular tongue was the language of my dreams, I didn't ever imagine myself returning to live in Kentucky. Time and time again, I visited and felt that so little had changed. As a grown woman, I felt there was even less room for me there than when I was a child. Unchanged racism seemed to have grown more deeply entrenched. To me, coming home was like going back in time. So many of the times that I returned were moments given over to grief, that the old ways, the old culture, the old people were leaving us. Throughout the body of my work, those of you who read me know, I've drawn heavily on childhood memories of life in a culture where I felt I belonged. To fully become oneself, we have to understand the ground of our being. And that understanding invariably returns us to childhood. In The Hidden Wound, Wendell writes, "I have gone back to my native place, to live there mindful of its nature and its possibilities." Researching return migration, the movement of African Americans from urban cities to the rural South, Carol Stack says that the people she interviewed, she's an anthropologist, wanted to come home to reclaim aspects of belonging and community they had not found in other places, even as they also longed to work for change in the worlds of their growing up, which seemed so unchanged. She explains, no one's seeking timeless paradise, and no one, however nostalgic, is really seeking to turn back the clock. What people are seeking is not so much the home they left behind as a place that they feel they can change, a place in which their lives and strivings will make a difference, a place in which to create a home. In my own life, since leaving Kentucky, I have searched for home, for any place where I might feel again that culture of belonging. Like so many people, the young man last night talked about coming back here after 9/11. I too, being just a few blocks away from the World Trade Center, was deeply affected by the experience of 9/11. And not just that, but also by the experience many of us have had of so many people, young and old, facing grave illness and death. And as I faced the limitations of my own body, it awakened in me an intense yearning to experience anew aspects of a culture of belonging, even if that exists only as fragments or just fledgling worlds trying to stay vibrant in the midst of dominator culture. And so my return has led me to Berea, lying in bed listening to the sound of the train. Just as I lay in bed and listened to the train as a girl, I'm often awakened in the night by this familiar sound, the sound of my childhood, the world in which I first sowed the seeds of my being and becoming, the contemplative intellectual, choosing solitude, ideas, choosing critical thinking, choosing to become a writer, as many of the students that I've talked to today are here trying to sow the seeds of their becoming writers. The world of my childhood was a world of contrast. On one hand, a lush green landscape of fast horses, natural waterfalls, tobacco crops, and red birds. And on the other hand, a world of greedy exploitation, of big homes and little shacks, a world of fear and domination, of man over nature, of white over black, of top and bottom. In my childhood, I dreamed about a culture of belonging. I still dream that dream. I contemplate what our lives would be like if we knew how to cultivate awareness, to live mindfully, peacefully, if we learned habits of being that would bring us closer together, that would help us build beloved community. In my work, rooted in my native place, and in the values I learned as a child, I seek to evoke a language of healing, of hope, of possibility, a language of dreams, a language of belonging. Thank you. Now, we have time for lots of questions. Stand up, say your name loud, be brief. If you're not brief with loving kindness, I'll ask you to be quiet. Your name? Celeste, go ahead. Be loud, Celeste.
Yay. Less of a question, but more just of a thanks. for along with your political writing, your writing's about love, that I just really appreciate kind of.
Well, okay, Celeste is thanking me for writing about love, but one of the things I say about love is deeply political in a culture of domination. But thank you.
But just kind of, and that you include so much of yourself in it, and I just feel like that makes it really authentic, and that you present it as something that can be really empowering, and that you're not powerless to, but just to.
Thank you so much. Another question? Comment? Where are you? Stand up. Say your name loud.
My name is Sky, and I was wondering, how did you really feel about the all-girl, all-white choir singing that song as a semester?
You know, see, okay, this is a good question. Did y'all hear that? How did I feel about the all-white choir? I'm less concerned about all whiteness than what whiteness is doing. There is nothing of harm to me in that caring all-white girls choir. Now, when I look at our government and its predominant whiteness, I feel deep concern, profound concern. And so I think that we have to move beyond. You know, I have this new children's book called Skin Again. Because I've been really concerned. A lot of people wrote to me and they said, you write these great books for adults, but what about children? And what happens when people learn bad ideas for 20 years? Let's start earlier. So I began to think about writing for children. So this new book, Skin Again, is about identity. And one of the things it starts off saying is the skin I'm in is just a covering. If you want to know who I am, you have to come inside and open your heart wide. But then it says, the skin I'm in looks good to me. It can tell you one small aspect of my identity. Because I think that as people of color, we get so tired of being told in white supremacy that our skin shouldn't matter, when those very people that tell us it shouldn't matter are then oppressing and exploiting us on the basis of that skin. We want to live in a world where our skin can be acknowledged, but not be a factor in oppression and exploitation. So that how do we teach children to value their skin? And that includes white kids. I want all kids to love the color of their skin, but not to see the color of their skin as linked to domination and exploitation. So to me, I didn't have any problems with the girls' choir and their whiteness. Hey, hello, isn't this a white institution for the most part? But the fact that it is a white institution doesn't mean that the white people who are here cannot make choices for freedom and justice. I mean, come on, many of you are sad that the chancellor is leaving precisely because he made more choices. You know, he's not perfect, but he made more choices for freedom and justice that some other, ruling white men might have made. And so there's a loss here, and you will feel that loss. You may not know it, but you will. Because of the way bureaucracy is moving in our culture, it's not moving toward a more just, caring, open world. So I think that we have to grow up now as a culture, and we can't assume that because somebody is black. I mean, how many of you saw Hotel Rwanda? Wasn't that a big lesson for those of us in this culture who think that the color of your skin matters, that people can create hierarchies of exploitation and domination when they look just alike? They can come up with any kind of reason to be divided. So the question is not to me what color is someone's skin, but what are their beliefs? What are their values? Who will stand with you? I mean, one of the things I feel as a middle-aged woman looking for a culture of belonging is I never thought I would ask that question in midlife. Who will stand with me? And as my parents age, and I tell people my parents are on the descent. They're not these kind of happy old people who are living their life. They're like, we're dying. You call them, and it's like, oh, we don't know how to reach you because, your dad may be dead next week. And then I hear, oh, Dad's out. I was like, well, wait, I thought he was going to be dead next week. Now you're saying he's out. But what I have realized about that is I want to be able to stand with my parents in this transitional moment of their life. Of course, was I not running away from mom and dad? Was I not the girl who, when I called home, if dad answered the phone and was like, oh, I'm hanging up, I wouldn't even say hi. It was like, sorry, didn't get mom, have nothing to say to dad. But these are the ways that age and awareness and experience changes you when you think about who will stand with you. So I urge you to think about that in your life, that to think that color is not valuable or important other than what little bit it tells us about someone's world, but rather that we look and seek to identify, where do you stand? Who do you stand with? I want to think that all of those young white women who came here today stand for justice. And you might say that I'm being romantic, but that's what I choose to think, because that's actually one of the things I like about Asheville. I feel that there are a number of people in this town who stand for justice, and that made me consider it as one of the places I might want to live. And Berea, Berea is just an awesome little college. We are, tuition free, but we are governed by 7 commitments. And one of those commitments is to the value of labor. It is to simple living. It is to justice. I mean, how many colleges in our nation actually have it as part of their mandate that they are committed to impartial love? Berea College was founded by a white man who had a dream that he felt God intended him to create a college where black and white people, mostly from Appalachia, could come and be educated together and live in a utopian community. I mean, it's an awesome history. And it is to those cultures of belonging that many of us are gravitating to give our energy and our resources, because what we really see is how much our nation, as it moves towards fascism, the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal nation, is trying to destroy cultures of belonging. So it behooves all of us. You don't have to go to Belize, and I'm not knocking going to Belize or, other places in South America. We can go to those places right here. I mean, if you go to Appalachia, people there are living in as extreme poverty as you will see in Hotel Rwanda. And these are, if you read my book on class, Where We Stand, Class Matters, I talked about the fact that the face of poverty in America is white. Millions of white people in our nation who are poor, but who are exiled to Vermont, Maine, Idaho, places where we don't see that white poor because they blend in. But in many of our urban cities, black poor don't blend in. Or here in Asheville, you notice the black poor in a way that belies the reality that the face of poverty, think about it, Class Matters is the only Bell Hooks book that has a white person on the cover. Because I said, and you know that those white publishers wanted to put a black person on the cover. I said no, because the major point of my book is that the face of poverty in America is white. It is not, that image of the black welfare mother who's getting all the money. But anyhow, that was very long-winded. I will try to not be as long-winded. Your question, and then I'll come to you. Stand up, be loud. Your name?
I'm Caitlin. And my question is about, in your autobiography, in the last part of it, you talk about having to make a world for yourself in a cave of existence,
She's asking me about my autobiography, Bone Black, and saying that towards the end of it, I talk about having to build a world for myself.
And specifically use a symbol of a cave. And I'm wondering if your return to the ground of your being is also partly to return to this cave, or if maybe this cave travels with you along this wilderness of...
Well, the cave is really a metaphor for the interior landscape. And if you know Kentuckians, if there are Kentuckians here, Kentucky has incredible caves. Most famous is Mammoth Caves. But the cave is a metaphor for the inner life. Because we're living in a culture where most people don't have an inner life. our culture does not value inner life. That's why many people, think about all the people you know that leave their TV on even when they're sleeping, that they can't even bear those little moments of silence. And I urge you to read the Jesuit priest Henry Nouwen's work on solitude. I urge you to read Carolyn Helburn. Remember, she committed suicide? Feminist thinker Carolyn Helburn, about 2 years ago now. Her last book about being 60 was a lot about solitude and nature. Another question back, way in the back there. Your name? Do you see what she talked about, returning to a culture of belonging? Do I see a danger in romanticizing?
Yeah, I'm also in Asheville. I see a lot of there's a lot of social justice talk in Asheville, but I think at another level, especially when it comes to race, it's not that there's so much insensitivity to the lack of awareness.
Okay, I paraphrase, I apologize, what she said, that basically, to cut to the chase, she says that there's a lot of talk in Asheville about anti-racism, but is the practice really in line with the theory? And am I not romanticizing? I think that one of the great gifts of Buddhism for me and being involved with Thich Nhat Hanh is being taught that, we always want everything right now. And we are unable to appreciate basically protracted struggle. So that I feel like both in Berea, because it's the same gripe a lot of black people have about Berea, that the college has these values, but is it really living up to them? And I think the first thing all of us have to ask is not how Asheville is failing, but what are you doing? What are you doing for Asheville to realize the anti-racism that you want to live within? When I came to Berea, and I said, I got to get some black folks here to be with me. Some more black people. And I immediately started trying to recruit my sister, who lives in Flint, Michigan, and has been unhappy. And her whole thing was, she was like, girl, there's just not enough black people here for me. And I said, well, wait a minute. Is 50 unhealthy black people better than living where maybe there are 5 very healthy, functional black people? Because there again, I think in an anti-intellectual culture where we think in things very simplistically, we have to ask ourselves, as the students asked me today, a student, Tariq was trying to talk about, what does it mean if you've been raised in a different kind of experience of blackness? And I said, there are varieties of black experience. If you're black and you grew up in the all-white world, that's your black experience. If you're black and you grew up in predominantly gay areas, that's your black experience. Part of what we have to grow up as black people is recognizing that there is no one black experience, that there are varieties of black experience. I get the students who are biracial feeling bad because they didn't know anybody black. And I say, you knew yourself. There is your black experience. That's what you have to explore. I don't actually feel we're in danger of romanticizing. Do you really think I'm going to stop being a cultural critic and I'm just going to act like, coming back to Kentucky, it's just perfect? When I gave this talk, which the only other place I've given it is in Kentucky, people ask me, well, what is the hardest thing from, not living in Manhattan and living in Berea? I said, the hardest thing for me is people dropping over. Because when you ask me, as some of you have today, about my writing, I have a very disciplined, contemplative writing life. And the truth of life in Manhattan is very, in the 10 years I've lived there, maybe 3 people dropped over. Every day of my life in Berea, somebody says, I saw you sitting on the couch. I saw you in the driveway, or people come over and they come over early. And that has been a challenge for me because I've never had to, and this is what people say that cracks me up. I tell people I write in the morning. And they say, that's why I came over, because I knew you would be here. It's like, so I don't feel that we're in danger of romanticizing, I think the biggest threat to our nation is that we're in danger from not learning from our past, from not privileging the lessons of our ancestors. I mean, think about the incredible ancestors in this nation who've written about the dangers of imperialism. I mean, we have a Martin Luther King holiday, but do we really value Martin Luther King telling us that we must challenge the giant triplets of imperialism, materialism, and war? I mean, have we taken that seriously? You know, I mean, I think that those are the real issues for us, not to be romantic, but to be willing to learn from the past, to be willing to admit that we didn't know the value of something that we now know the value of. Your name, brother, how you doing? Hello, Jonathan.
Yeah, I just have a question. What is your take on African Americans and internalized racism and in distancing themselves from their African heritage?
Well, I feel like, you know, he asked me about internalized racism. We talked about this earlier, that we live in a culture that is white supremacist. So the more a black person distances themselves from blackness, the easier it is for them to succeed in the culture. I mean, if you're loving black people, you know black people out there who are loving and decolonized, it's harder for you to function in the culture. You know, if you are somebody who's challenging, and let's just take sports, because I was always a big fan. I'm a big basketball fan. When I was a younger girl, I was always a big fan of Lou Alcindor, who then became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But look at his history, and look at how unpopular he was when he was a Muslim, when he was talking about capitalism. But then when he became a capitalist, you know, when he married that, or not married, but lived with that white chick from Iowa who was bragging on TV, you know, bragging on TV how her parents were really racist. And I'm thinking, now here's a brother that could have all kind of women in his life, and he's going to choose some woman whose parents won't even embrace him with love. That's sick. I mean, healthy people don't choose. It's not that she's white now. Remember, that's what I said. Embrace him with love. Because a young student, black woman today, asked me about interracial dating. I said, girl, go to the place where you are loved in your life. You know, because just because a black person is with a white person, a lot of white people that are with black people are just as racist as the black people that aren't with us. So we can't assume that because somebody is willing to date one black person or have sex with them, that means they're not racist. So I feel like, you know, Cornell said to me yesterday that he just felt we were in such difficulties as black people. And I think part of it is we've never healed our wounded self-esteem, our collective wounded self-esteem. And we have not healed the part of us, like we are Americans just like everybody else, and we are greedy just like everybody else. You know, when students, here's just a low-level example. Students said, Dr. Hooks, I don't have money to buy your book. And I was like, wait a minute, didn't I see you at that $10 movie the other night? You know, some stupid movie. How much you pay for that? And so once again, we see a question of values. It's not that you didn't have the money, it's what value did you choose? What did you choose to validate more? It's like Cornell saying, all these people running up to say Dr. West, but have they really read and studied my books? I mean, think about Du Bois. Du Bois probably didn't have everybody running up to him in the airport. But those of us who came to Du Bois's work really studied his work. To me, part of why I wrote Rock My Soul, which is on sale after the thing, Black People and Self-Esteem, is precisely because I feel that many of us black folks are suffering from wounded self-esteem. Many of us have money, have fame, have all the things that our culture has told us this is what success is, and we're still suffering. Have recovery, but we're still suffering. So that I think that those issues of healing that inner wound, you know, and while race matters, and you know Bell Hooks knows race matters, it also matters what happened to us in our childhood. You know, because I used to be really in many bitter and loving debates with gay filmmaker Marlon Riggs before his death. And you know, Marlon used to always say, black men loving black men is the revolutionary act. And I used to say, black men dealing with their childhoods is the revolutionary act. Because for many of us, we are still caught in the sadness and grief of childhood. I know I just had some therapy 2 weeks ago, and I was so surprised by how deep my grief still was about aspects of my childhood. Because you think, don't we ever get over it? You know, it's just sometimes it feels like so frustrating that you're still, I call it archaeologically digging in the past, you know. But until we heal, we're there, wedded to the past. There was one question here. Your name?
Scott. Once a week, I drive to Morganton and teach a class in a maximum security prison there. And one of the things that I try to do is take something back from the outside world that can keep the...
Can people hear him in the back? Once a week, he teaches in a maximum security prison, and he tries to take something back
that can give the students some sort of hope about when they get out.
That can give students hope about when they get out.
What can I take back from you for that?
He wants to know what he can take back from me. Well, I'm on this kick lately that I say, whatever your question, love is the answer. And I am really fond of the book by Jarvis J. Masters, a young black man on death row who has come to Buddhism. And if you read his book, it's an awesome testimony to how one can transform one's life and one's consciousness even on death row. And he's been in prison since he was 18 years old. Jarvis J. Masters. Your name?
I'm Lydia. And of all your accomplishments as a human, as a woman, as a writer, what do you feel the most triumphant about?
I feel the most triumphant about this stage of my life where I feel so divinely called to speak about the role of love in relation to ending domination, because I have a new series for kids coming out, and it's called, it's 10 books on love for children. Because I feel like if children understood what love really is a combination, I tell people, of 6 things: care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust. A child would know that when someone is brutally beating you, they're not loving you. You know, in the beginning of my book, All About Love, I say that I knew as a 5-year-old that when my father was brutally beating me, he wasn't loving me. You know, so when adults tried to pull that bullshit like, oh, he really loves you, this is for your own good, you know, I knew in my little kid heart that I wasn't experiencing love, that I was experiencing fear, dread, you know, all of those things. And are we surprised that in my first relationship with a man, I was hit? You know, because those of us who know that trajectory, I just came back from an amazing conference on intimate violence in Texas. And just to hear the testimony of so many people there. So anyhow, I'm writing all these books for kids. So I think that that's an amazing opportunity of life, to be an intellectual in this society and to be able to write for kids, books that are aimed at, you know, like the publisher of Disney Hyperion children's books came to me and said, oh, Belle, could you make one of these books 1 words? Because our children like to shout 1 words. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, how am I going to create this children's book that is just 1 words? But then I thought about Western metaphysical dualism. Why are we here on the planet? What is our ontological reason for being? And the answer came to me is we are here to love. So that's one of the books in the series. It starts, we are here to love. Shout, shout. Hosanna, Hosanna, praise, praise, peace, peace. We are here to love. I mean, how easy is that book? But what does it tell a child about the purpose of life? I want to share, because not a lot of people know about his work. I'm very fond of the work of a white male therapist, Terrence Real. He has a book called How Can I Get Through to You? He has a book on men and depression. And he's doing a lot of the work around boys in our nation and men in what he calls relational recovery. But imagine if you were a little boy in this society, and instead of being told when you're a kid, you're here to make war. You're here to beat up the other kid. You know, you're here to hit the home run and knock the other guy out of the way. I mean, imagine what our culture would be like if boys and girls alike were made to feel that we are here to love. Your question? Stand up and be heard.
Has your past affected your future?
Okay, tell me your name.
Christian.
Christian, and how old are you?
12.
Christian is 12, and I'm so happy he's here. He wanted to know how has my past affected my future. What your past is kind of like a map that you can follow in your life. And those of us who've had wounded pasts often follow a map to the future that just reproduces our past. So we live over and over again what happened to us in the past. The incredible thing, you know, those of you who are Christian know that we talk about in Christianity, God gives us choices. I have set before you life and death, therefore choose life. So the great thing about the past is we can learn from it and we can create different maps that lead to a different future. You know, one of the maps of my past was my daddy said, a girl shouldn't really get an education. She's not really going to be fit for anybody marrying her. Imagine who I would have been if I had followed that map. Instead, in the secrecy, my mother said, oh, you need to get as much education as you can, because that way you'll be able to support yourself and you'll never have to be with any man because he has the job and you don't. So there you have two scripts of life from the past. And how do you decide which to follow? I'm going to take one more question and conclude. Okay, way in the back there. Your name? Girl, you're going to have to talk louder. We got the Smith part, but nothing else.
Joanne.
Okay, got you.
Okay, my question is in reference to the ever-growing hip-hop culture. And just as an example, the all-white staff sung a hip-hop song. My question is, what is your intake or your comments on the negative stereotypes that we are seeing being projected through the hip-hop culture in reference to African-American men and particularly African-American women?
Oh, one of the things about hip-hop culture is that it's complex. You know, we hear the most violent rap, gangster rap, misogynist rap, but there are rap against rape. There's all kind of hip-hop that enlightens us about racism. So the first thing we have to do when we talk about hip-hop is make a distinction between hip-hop as a musical culture and the forms of that music that are most endorsed by imperialist white supremacist culture. You know, because, you know, having been in the world of the Ice Cube, and a lot of these men create lyrics that have no relation to how they live their lives. You know, how they parent, what they teach their children, because it's about money. And our culture has said, whatever you do to make a lot of money is okay. Whatever kind of role you play, if it makes a lot of money, it's okay. So I think that we have to stop looking at hip-hop, first of all, as just being about those individuals who make the music, and think about the whole apparatus of white male patriarchy that surrounds them. Think about all those white boys that buy music from a black man telling him a woman is a bitch and a hoe. But his dad, who might not ever be a white man who would call a woman a bitch and a hoe, is using, I call it, the plantation culture of misogyny. That black men get to be the laborers in the plantation culture of misogyny. So the white man can be father knows best in his false persona. But in his real persona, he can be giving his money to his white male son to buy all of these lyrics that are full of misogyny, hatred, racism, internalized racism. So I think we have to look at that whole picture. And I feel like every generation has had a form of music that older generations think is wicked. So once again, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, what needs does this music satisfy? You know, why are there not, I mean, I'm less distressed about hip hop than that we have so many black children who've never heard the blues, who don't know who John Coltrane is. Because life is not, to me, about censorship. Life is about variety and choice. So that if you know the blues, if you know R&B, I mean, I had this young boyfriend. I don't think I had him when I was here last, but I remember asking him, you know, so do you like Otis Redding? And he was like, you keep forgetting, I was born in 1960 something. I don't know who Otis Redding is. And I thought to myself, wow, think about how when you're in love with somebody, how much you can have a dialogue through music. You know, and I was thinking, I remember when I was in the relationship where I would leave the house and say, you know, if you want to know how I feel, that was in the day of records, play cut number such and such, you know. You know, Otis singing, this is my lover's prayer, I hope it reaches out to you. And think about this, think about a black man writing lyrics that say, my life is such a weary thing. And then he goes on to talk about that in his life, that is so weary and so depressing, he finds the capacity to connect and to love. You know, this is my lover's prayer that reaches out to you. And contrast that with the musical culture that's all about the bitch and the hoe and what you gonna give me and how I'm gonna get. And again, I don't want to say don't listen to that. I want to say know the other forms of music that have shaped our culture. And at some point, you'll make that choice in your life, you know. And I think that that's the real challenge to all of us. We are a country full of so much. I mean, so many of us, when we saw Hotel Rwanda, were reminded of the enormous possibilities that we have in this culture, many of which are being taken away from us, and people aren't even paying attention. Free speech, lots of censorship, you know, but those of us who are paying attention are questioning the values which we live our lives by, questioning the culture of belonging, trying to create alternative cultures of freedom and justice and hope. And there is my hope, as the Chancellor read that quote from Teaching Community, that my hope lies in our subcultures. It lies in the authentic communities that we build in our lives. It lies in my white friend from freshman year in college, came to my 50-something birthday, and she brought a picture of us. We were 18 years old. I had the big afro, and she had straightened out her little kinky hair. And she said this picture was in a newspaper, and we were to represent the future of America. And the future of America was about women coming into our own in education. It was about women daring to transgress the boundaries of race, women daring to be close without a fear of being seen as lesbian, because we celebrate lesbianism in all the women for whom that is their choice in their life. And we were just amazed to think about where our nation has come since the day that picture was taken. It seems to me that this is our true future. It's a culture of belonging. And just let me read again so you leave here with an understanding of what did she mean by a culture of belonging. The values of a culture of belonging are strong sense of reciprocal connection to the land where one lives, empathic relationship to animals. And many of you know I've had to struggle with that one. I've had a really phobic fear of dogs, but I'm coming along. Self-restraint, custodial conservatism, deliberateness, balance, expressiveness, generosity, egalitarianism, mutual affinity for alternative modes of knowing, playfulness, inclusiveness, nonviolent conflict resolution, and open to spirit. I hope that I have exemplified in my presence here today to all of you that I have embodied by my actions what it means to live in a culture of belonging. Thank you.